This is my blood work after 1 year on the carnivore diet.
I know I'm a little bit late to reacting to the blood work, but I contemplated whether or not I should actually do it, but I do think it has important lessons that everyone can learn. There are a few markers on this blood work that do draw some attention. First is the glucose at the top of the normal reference range, and the same with HbA1c, which is essentially a measure of your average blood glucose. Given that this individual is extremely lean and extremely healthy and very active, and doesn't eat essentially any carbohydrates, this elevated almost pre-diabetic fasting glucose and HbA1c is essentially a picture-perfect example of a dietary habit that can increase the risk of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. The cause of insulin resistance inside of cells is the accumulation of lipid byproducts. These include diacylglycerols and ceramides. It appears that saturated fat increases the accumulation of diacylglycerols within the muscle cells, and increases the accumulation of ceramides and fats within the liver, more than unsaturated fats and fructose. Given that the carnivore diet is extremely high in saturated fat, this high blood glucose and HbA1c is an indication that this dietary strategy is causing this individual to trend towards prediabetes, even despite being healthy, lean, and eating a very low carbohydrate diet. As you may have expected, the other marker that was a little bit of concern is this individual's blood lipid levels. He has extremely high HDL cholesterol, extremely high LDL cholesterol, and extremely high total cholesterol, in which this individual stated the following.
I am way over that. I don't give a rip. Hear me when I say this. Cholesterol is important, just not in the way that most of us are led to believe. One of the best indicators for heart disease, triglycerides divided by HDL. Ideally, you want that ratio to be 2 or less. Mine's at 0.61. On top of that, my C-reactive protein, it's at 0.22. That's incredible. Again, I'm not saying cholesterol is irrelevant. It's very relevant, particularly if you have diabetes or you're metabolically unhealthy.
Essentially, this individual is postulating that because he has low inflammation and a high HDL cholesterol level, he has no need to worry about his elevated level of total and LDL cholesterol. We do know that elevated HDL cholesterol and low triglycerides, along with low baseline inflammation, are all protective against cardiovascular disease. But we have millions and millions of data points, and hundreds if not thousands of studies, indicating that as LDL cholesterol and LDL particle count increases, so does the risk of cardiovascular mortality. In addition to that, there's a lot more data indicating that extremely high HDL cholesterol is not always beneficial. In fact, at high levels, elevated HDL cholesterol may actually increase the risk of cardiovascular complications, as extremely elevated HDL cholesterol loses its beneficial properties and no longer becomes protective against the development of ASCVD. In addition, we have multiple studies indicating that having low inflammatory markers, including CRP, is not protective against elevated LDL cholesterol. And whether or not you have high or low C-reactive protein, it does not alter the benefits of statin therapy. Essentially, the current literature indicates the following. If we use this schematic, ApoB lipoproteins, which includes LDL and other atherogenic lipoproteins, are like bullets. The fewer bullets you have, the lower your risk of cardiovascular complication. And the more bullets you have, the greater your risk. However, but things like having high HDL, low triglycerides, and having low inflammatory markers are like shields that can protect you against the development of cardiovascular disease. However, even in this scenario, the fewer bullets, or in this case ApoB lipoproteins, that we have circulating in our bloodstream, the lower our risk of cardiovascular complications would still be, even if we had all of these protective barriers up. And based off of the literature that we discussed, it seems like the bullets are far more important than the protective barriers. And sometimes, such as in the case of HDL cholesterol, something that is protective in excess can become pathological. That being said, one important thing that we do know, just a moderate reintroduction of carbohydrates can markedly decrease LDL cholesterol levels on those consuming a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet. In the grand scheme of things, what was uncovered on this blood work is more or less what I would have predicted based off of what we know about a high-saturated fat, low-carbohydrate diet. I think brushing these factors under the rug and pretending they're either not important or not acknowledging them in the first place, I didn't personally think was warranted. This isn't even me saying that you must stop the carnivore diet, because I can't change the way that you prefer to eat. However, acknowledging some of the potential downsides of any diet demonstrates that you are not being blinded by your biases, and is the best way to inform the general public.